Book 1 is called Athena Inspires the Prince, and that title may already surprise you. This is the Odyssey, a story about one of the most famous heroes in all of literature. King Odysseus is clever, resourceful, and legendary for his role in the Trojan War. You might reasonably expect this story to begin with him, but it doesn't. Instead, Homer opens the epic in a place called Ithaca, Odysseus' home, and Odysseus is nowhere to be found. His palace is filled with strangers. His wealth is being consumed, and his family is left waiting, uncertain whether he is alive or dead. The character we follow most closely in this opening book is Telemachus, Odysseus' son. Telemachus is still young. He has grown up without his father, surrounded by stories about a man he doesn't remember. He knows who Odysseus was, but he does not yet know who he himself is supposed to be. This choice, beginning the epic with Telemachus rather than Odysseus, is not an accident. It tells us something important about the kind of story Homer is about to tell. You may have heard the Odyssey is about Odysseus trying to make his way back home after the long Trojan War. It's a tale full of adventure and trials. It's also a story about absence. What happens when a powerful figure is missing, and how that absence shapes the people left behind. As we move through Book 1, we'll watch the gods discuss Odysseus' fate. We'll see Ithaca through Telemachus' eyes, and we'll meet a goddess who arrives in disguise, not to rescue him, but to challenge him. So as we begin this epic saga, here's a question to keep in mind. Why would Homer choose to begin a hero's epic by showing us everything the hero has left undone? That question will guide us through the book. Before we begin analyzing this book, we'll start with an objective plot summary. Our goal here is to make sure we understand the most important events in this chapter. This kind of summary should be chronological and neutral, with no interpretation. We'll focus on what happens first, and only later decide what it means. Book 1 opens far from Ithaca, among the gods on Mount Olympus. The Trojan War has ended, and most of the Greek heroes who fought in it have returned home. Odysseus has not. The gods discuss his fate, and Zeus reflects on how often mortals blame the gods for troubles caused by their own choices. Athena, who has long favored Odysseus, speaks up on his behalf. She reminds Zeus that Odysseus is being held far from home on the island of the nymph Calypso, unable to leave. Zeus agrees that it is time for Odysseus' journey to continue. Rather than going to Odysseus herself, Athena travels to Ithaca, disguised as a visitor named Mentes. In Ithaca, she finds Odysseus' household in disarray. A group of noblemen, known as the suitors, have taken over the palace. They eat Odysseus' food, drink his wine, and compete for the hand of his wife, Penelope, assuming that Odysseus will never return. Telemachus, Odysseus' son, is uneasy and unhappy, but he does not yet know how to stop them. Athena, still in disguise, speaks privately with Telemachus. She encourages him to stop thinking of himself as a helpless child and to begin acting like the son of a great king. She urges him to call an assembly of the people and to set out on a journey to seek news of his father. After Athena departs, Telemachus begins to feel a change within himself. That night, a singer performs songs of the Trojan War, which causes Penelope to grieve for her missing husband. Telemachus speaks to her firmly for the first time, asking her to return to her rooms and leave public matters to him. Telemachus announces to the suitors that he will speak at an assembly in the morning, and they will be given official notice to clear out. Two of the suitors push back. Book 1 ends with Telemachus lying awake, thinking about the journey he has been challenged to undertake. Now that we have a clear sense of what happens in Book 1, we can turn to the work of analysis. The main literary device we will focus on in this chapter is point of view. In literature, point of view refers to whose perspective the reader follows, and how that perspective shapes what we know, what we notice, and what we're allowed to understand at any given moment. Authors choose point of view very carefully because it controls the story's focus and its emotional impact. What's remarkable about Book 1 of the Odyssey is that the story does not begin with Odysseus' point of view. Instead, we see Odysseus discussed by the gods. We see the effects of his absence in Ithaca. And we experience the situation most directly through Telemachus, his son. That choice matters. This didn't happen by accident. Homer wrote it this way on purpose. By keeping Odysseus off stage, Homer invites us to feel uncertainty. We don't know when or even if he will return. We don't know what kind of man is he now. And like Telemachus, we are left to piece together who Odysseus might be based on stories, memories, and expectations. As we look more closely at the text, we'll pay attention to how Homer uses point of view to shape our experience of this opening chapter and to prepare us for the journey ahead. You may have read Book 1 straight through without stopping or rereading. That kind of reading is important. It helps us understand the sequence of events and the overall shape of the story. But now it's time for a different kind of work, close reading. In close reading, we return to certain passages that seem especially significant. We slow down, sometimes going line by line, and observe carefully what the author is doing. We ask, what choices did the author make here? And what do those choices accomplish for us as readers? Now, let's take a close look at the opening scene of the book, the Council of the Gods. Right away, something important happens. Odysseus is not present, but he is being talked about. Zeus speaks first. He reflects on how human beings often blame the gods for their troubles, even when those troubles come from their own choices. This sets the tone for the entire epic. Before we ever see Odysseus act, we're reminded that actions have consequences and that responsibility matters. Athena then enters the conversation. She speaks up for Odysseus, reminding Zeus of his intelligence, his loyalty, and the suffering he has already endured. Through her words and Zeus's reaction, we learn about Odysseus indirectly. He's framed as clever, resourceful, and deserving of help, but we also learn that he has powerful enemies among the gods. Notice how Homer introduces his hero. Odysseus does not appear in action. He does not speak. Instead, we meet him through the opinions of others. That choice shapes our understanding in a subtle way. Because we hear about Odysseus rather than hearing from him, we are encouraged to think about reputation. We begin the story knowing Odysseus as a figure of legend, discussed by gods, rather than as a person we know directly. This creates distance, and it creates curiosity. Homer is teaching us how to read this story. We are meant to pay attention to not only what characters do, but how they are described and by whom. As we continue, keep this question in mind. How does meeting Odysseus through other voices affect the way we judge him before he ever appears on stage? For our second close reading, we'll turn to Athena's conversation with Telemachus in Ithaca. Here, the point of view changes dramatically. We move away from the gods on Mount Olympus and into the private thoughts and uncertainties of a young man who feels powerless in his own home. When Athena speaks to Telemachus, still disguised, she does something very specific. She does not solve his problem for him. Instead, she challenges the way he sees himself. She reminds him of who his father was. She speaks of Odysseus's reputation and strength. And then she asks Telemachus to imagine himself not as a child waiting for rescue, but as someone capable of action. Notice the contrast here between what Telemachus believes and what Athena believes about him. Telemachus speaks with hesitation. He doubts his authority. He worries about his lack of power. Athena, by contrast, speaks with confidence and certainty. She treats him as someone who is ready to act, even if he does not yet feel that way. Through this exchange, Homer allows us to experience Telemachus's uncertainty from the inside. We are not told simply that he is unsure. We hear it in his words, and we see it in his reluctance to challenge the suitors. At the same time, we also glimpse the beginning of change. After Athena leaves, Telemachus doesn't suddenly become fearless, but something has shifted. He begins to imagine a future in which he does more than wait. There's a small transformation from hesitation to intention. By placing us inside Telemachus's point of view at this moment, Homer prepares us for the journey ahead. Before Odysseus can return home, his son must begin to grow into his role. At this point, it's worth pausing to clear up a possible confusion. Athena appears often in this opening book. She speaks confidently, she has clear goals, and she plays an important role in setting the story in motion. But this is not Athena's story. Even when a powerful character like Athena enters the scene, Homer does not shift the story's focus to her inner thoughts or her personal struggles. Athena already knows what must be done. She is not the one in doubt. Instead, the story stays centered on Telemachus. We follow his uncertainty. We hear his hesitation. We watch him begin to imagine a different future for himself. One way to tell whose story you are reading is to ask, who is being tested? Who is changing? In Book 1, that character is Telemachus. The gods may guide events from above, but the story itself unfolds through human uncertainty and human growth. It's a good idea to summarize for yourself what are the takeaways of this chapter. But remember, you can always come back and revisit passages and see if you feel differently about them later. In fact, when you read more of this book, it may change your thinking about earlier parts. So, what are the takeaways from Book 1 of the Odyssey? By the end of Book 1, very little has changed on the surface. Odysseus is still far from home. The suitors still occupy his palace. Telemachus has not yet taken action, and yet something important has changed. By choosing to begin the Odyssey with Telemachus rather than Odysseus, Homer shapes the way we experience the entire story. Instead of starting with heroic action, we begin with uncertainty, waiting, and doubt. We are asked to feel the cost of absence before we see the adventure of return. This choice also reframes what kind of hero story this will be. Odysseus is famous for his strength and intelligence, but the epic does not rush to display those qualities. Instead, it asks us to watch a young man who must grow into responsibility before his father can reclaim his place. Point of view makes this possible. Because we see Ithaca through Telemachus's eyes, we understand from the start that the suitors are an ongoing threat, one that exposes the fragility of order when leadership is missing. Home is Odysseus's goal and long-sought destination, but peace and harmony must be restored there before he can truly have a victorious homecoming. It's important that we didn't rush through book 1 in a hurry to get to the good parts. This first book is a deliberate beginning, one that teaches us how to read the epic that follows. As we move into book 2, the question is no longer whether Telemachus feels uncertain, it's whether he's ready to act. At Socratica, we promise that you'll learn more with us. That's why we've created a reader's guide for each chapter of the Odyssey. Look for the link below. The reader's guide is designed to help you practice the same kinds of thinking we used in this video. It includes a clear summary of book 1, questions that ask you to look back at the text for evidence, and short writing prompts that help you explain your ideas carefully. Reading closely and then writing about what you notice is how you get better at this kind of work. There are no time constraints and no grades. The goal isn't to rush to the right answer, but to practice making thoughtful, well-supported interpretations. So take some time with the reader's guide. It will really help you get more out of your reading. Then we'll move on to book 2, where Telemachus takes his first public step forward.